Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 137th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the current deadlock between the President and the U.S. Congress. Ever since George Washington's second term as President, there have been serious conflicts between the President and the Congress, and between the political parties. The question of the day is the current conflict really about a border wall, or is this the price we pay for the benefit of a constitutional system of checks and balances provided by the three branches of government and a two-party system? Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Bryan Laubaugh, President of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. Bryan, we're going to start off with you. Our country is currently involved in a partial government shutdown, ostensibly over a disagreement about a border wall. Some think that the proposed border wall has little or nothing to do with the shutdown, and it's all about politics. What do you think?
I would agree with that observation. We've had shutdowns before over a variety of things. The past administration had a shutdown, lasted 13 days. I was watching a program that comes on very early. We go up to the Y, get there when it opens, and there's a program called Democracy Now! And it's a very left-leaning program. It's a variety of topics. Well, they were interviewing a gentleman that was an NBC journalist and reporter who just recently quit. He'd been with them some 20 years, and he wrote a letter. And basically, he's not a fan of the current administration. I think I would agree with him as far as his take on the current administration and our current president. And he said a lot of the things that the media latches on to is because they are just so vehemently opposed to, Mr. Trump. And he talked about several different things. He said, we need to get past this and start to work together and work our way through, some of these issues that seem so important, the sort of the issue of the day. He put a lot of this at the feet of our local, our media, about what they have a tendency to, broadcast each and every day. And he thought that there were solutions for a variety of these issues, but it's that 24-hour news cycle, all the politics that goes into it. People get their feelings hurt and all that kind of stuff. So I believe that if we put some of the politics aside, we as a country, the way the system is designed, can come to some sort of a solution for this. Government is messy. We have a Senate and a Congress, and we have an executive branch, and it's been designed to create some of this opposition because we don't believe in kings. We're not a monarchy. We're not a we're not a government that's just governed by a dictator. So each house, the House and the Senate both have responsibilities, and the President has responsibilities, and they have to learn to get along. I think that's what brings people together and builds consensus. And right now we have an impasse, and they've taken to the airwaves, and it's easy to create a this particular issue and fashioning it as a border wall issue. We've had immigration problems in this country for a long time. There wasn't nary a peep when they passed the border fence security measure back in the Bush administration for 700 miles.
That was in 06.
Of fence.
Yeah.
The Obama administration finished it. A lot of the things that get reported as far as the issues with separation of families and these centers that they've created, they've all been there. It's just that the media hasn't used them as a focal point. We've had children die in custody of the Border Patrol, and they were in the process of getting help. Nobody reported that under the past administrations because it was just one of those things that happened when children and families go across hundreds of miles of desert and rough terrain, and they don't eat and they don't drink, and they collapse, and we find them and we take them to get the necessary medical treatment. Those people, the Border Patrol and all those other folks that are involved, they're not punished for that. They've never been, basically run up the social media pole and whipped because they tried to help somebody, and casting them as the perpetrators of this cruel and unusual punishment. That's ridiculous. So I think we just need to step away from this for a little bit and look at what the issues are and come to a solution. And I think there's a solution there, and stop making this into the crisis of the day.
If I'm reading properly between the lines, you're believing that maybe it's a political issue and not...
I think it is a political issue.
Patty, do you think, or would you agree with George Washington that maybe we'd be better off without parties?
No. I think you need parties for that dissent and for to have both sides of any, because there's going to be two sides to almost any issue. And if you do not have the parties, you're not going to see those two sides focused and be able to discuss and come to a better solution, possibly. I am very concerned about the present situation, and I agree with you. It is political. I consider it to be more using a political stance to try to solve an issue problem. And I believe it's the Republicans that are causing that problem right now. And the thing I really object to is the
Bryan,
fact...
are you as surprised at that as I am?
I think that's what the current media want you to believe.
Well, I think that's what's happening, because what's happening in this particular case is that the president, because of a political issue that he has not been able to, it was his campaign promise, he feels that he must support, to keep his base intact, he has to get his wall built that was going to be paid by Mexico.
Can't you give him a few points for being really insistent on keeping the campaign promise? His major campaign promise.
He's trying to keep it, but not by trying to keep that promise, by using the government as his hostage, shutting the government down, for which he has taken credit for, and he said he will do it, and he will hold the government hostage until his wall gets built or he gets the money for his wall. And I think that's ridiculous. Why put 800,000 people on furlough or being forced to work without pay? Why have the side effects that are going to occur from this, and the fact that money for SNAP programs will run out very shortly? Money that's going to it'll affect how quickly your income tax check will come in. It will affect whether rent subsidies are paid to people. People could lose their homes. It will affect people that cannot get a loan. It will affect subsidies that are given to farmers. And all of these things are being affected.
And you blame all of that on Trump and the Republicans.
I blame that on the fact that the government is shut down as a leverage or as a tool to try to get what he wants. What was it, a year and a half ago, that he was offered $25 billion as long as the DACA program was put into place. And he said, no, I want everything I want. I want the visa lottery eliminated. I want chain migration eliminated, and I want this done. And if I don't get everything I want, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home. Should have accepted that offer. It was a pretty good offer looking back. Then, shortly, in December, there was a bill that went through the House, and this was the Republican House.
What month?
I think this was in early December.
December.
Went through with the budget. It went through without the wall included. It went to the Senate. It passed overwhelmingly. Trump had said he was going to sign this bill. But then Ann Coulter came out and said he was wrong to do that. Sean Hannity came out and said he was wrong to do it. Rush Limbaugh said he was weak if he did this. So what does he do? He calls up Paul Ryan and said, listen, we can't do this. When that bill comes back to you, don't approve it because I'm not going to sign it. And then they put through another one. So he changed his mind on it. And then hence we end up with the government shutdown now. And it's simply so he can save political face. And yes, that is obviously a political problem. I don't like the fact that incorrect facts are being used in order to support the crisis that is on the border. Do I agree that there's problems with immigration? Yes. Do I believe that they should sit down and discuss it? Absolutely. Do I believe that the fence program, that does work? But there are other ways to attack this rather than building this gargantuan wall. And I don't care if it's out of concrete or out of steel. Perhaps the solution is to put more money into repairing the fence that we already have and then put more people at the ports of entry. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was on Fox this weekend talking with Chris Wallace, and she brought up the almost 4,000 terrorists that were
people with terrorist ties.
Ties, right, or they were on no-fly list and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And said they're coming through it. And Chris Wallace pointed out that almost all of those came through the airports. They weren't coming, they weren't coming across the southern border.
Who said that they were?
Sarah Huckabee did.
People.
Sarah
she did?
Huckabee did. Kristen.
No. She said that it was a combination of the Border Patrol and what was it? I made a note.
They
of
said that after she got caught on that.
Is that right?
When they found out that, they started walking that back. Well, that Sarah Huckabee said the same thing. Well, they're coming by land and sea. I think they said there were 6 in the first 6 months of 1918. There were 6 terrorists that were caught on the border itself coming in. There were 41 coming in from Canada. So there were more coming in from Canada than there was from the southern border.
But politicians will always play fast and loose with the facts.
Sure.
But I don't expect them to play fast and loose with the facts.
They do, because
I don't care. They shouldn't.
You're right. You're right.
I'm not arguing that it's not, that I'm not saying that it's right to do. I'm saying it is wrong to do, but they all do it.
Fine.
Yes,
they
they
all
do.
do it in this case.
You
And
can
you know
keep
what?
your doctor.
Quite frankly, everybody but Patty expects them to. No,
Right.
I think that the American voter has a love affair with lies. You tell
that's
the
unfortunate.
absolute truth, and you will not get reelected.
Right.
But there's got to be a better way to do this.
There is.
I think the thing they need to do first is to open the government, allow people to do their job, and then they can negotiate this. And hopefully reasonable minds will come to some kind of
Yeah, Ron, I don't know about you, Ron, but I'm terribly disappointed that in modern technology, with all the different sources of fact-checking, it hasn't made a bit of difference in politicians lying.
Absolutely.
They just do it even though they know they're going to get caught.
I'm beginning to fear somewhat from my liberal stance because I'm starting to agree with Bryan more and more. but I do agree it is a political thing. And yeah, it's the same with my favorite things, that climate change and evolution and all the rest of the scientifically based things that people just refuse to believe, even when the facts are there in front of them. A whole bunch of points have just come through my mind in this last thing. When I hear about the meeting yesterday between Trump and Pelosi, and that it's just a classic example of how not to do a meeting. It's 2 egos or 3 egos just clashing
on both sides.
On both sides.
Yeah, I agree on that.
And the psychology of that is very clear, really. It's just a couple of entrenched people digging their heels in when they're confronting nose to nose. It's a fight or flight, and they decided to just hack it out,
Ron, what do you think is the principle that's at stake? Nancy Pelosi said, we're not even going to talk about a wall. And Trump said, then I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Which he should have. There's no point, if there's no possibility of negotiating.
Both
there's,
wrong.
There's no point in taking the time.
Both
It's not quite what she said, but it was the same. She
both
just said,
wrong.
no, you're not going to get this even.
Yeah, both wrong. I mean, there are different ways to go at this. I think you need a softer
Absolutely.
approach to start with, or give the strong approach, but then soften up a little bit, work with a little compromise. They're just not doing that. They're
Yeah.
not doing that. And so a couple of other points. I saw an interview last night with a judge from San Francisco District Court, and she pointed out, and a graph was shown about the number of backlog of cases in the immigration courts, and it has gone up steadily and very rapidly. It looks almost like an exponential curve for a number of years under a number of presidential administrations. And she says, ever since 9/11, the defense and the enforcement wings have been getting all of the gravy. They were getting all of the funds, and the judicial area of it, the judges and the attorneys and so forth, are underrepresented in this. They're not getting the resources they need. They're not being able to get the judges and the
Agreed.
attorneys to
They
carry
need
out
more.
the cases. So that she says, I personally have over 400 cases on my docket. I've been there for several years. It's a very complex situation to try to determine whether or not a person is eligible for asylum or not. It's not an easy thing, quick thing to do. So it takes some time, it takes some resources to do that. So that's, and so we got a situation where okay, you'll either bring you in and you might disappear into the environment here, or something of that sort. Plus the whole case of people overstaying their visas, which is a large part of it.
None of this helps that.
Yeah. So there are many complex issues here, and to get into a straight political catfight is not productive at all. And I'm disappointed with both sides. I really am.
You know, when Trump, said to her, if somehow it would take him 30 days to open, will you give me my wall? And she said no. Well, I can understand why she said no, but it's because of the way he phrased it. He's saying, I'll do this now, but you've got to give me this, not now, but later. And she's saying, you could say to that, well, this is something that we will negotiate. I will definitely consider it.
Yeah.
And
But she has gone on record so many times answering the question, will you be open to discussing a wall? Her response, and I've seen it a couple of times, is, how many times do I have to say this?
Right.
Not $1 for a wall.
that's her. Well,
That's
that
pretty
$1,
definite.
That $1 comment, that one kind of bothers me, because that was a reporter asked her, would you give $1? And she said, $1? Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like she said, I'll only give $1 and no more. But I agree with you, because she is taking the political stance.
Sure.
Absolutely, because she's trying to cater to her left, base, and the people the new progressives that have come into Congress.
What caused the base to change its mind?
It's not the base. I shouldn't use the word base. It's the progressives that are in Congress that were just elected.
But they had a different.
It's the extremes. We've
the problem
shifted.
we have in the two-party
Right.
system is that on the Republican side, we have an extreme wing that only wants the Great Wall of China. That's the only solution. And you throw in that camp Ann Coulter and some of the talking heads that everybody's talked about.
Yeah.
They want to see a wall, okay? I believe there could be a technological wall. I mean,
Yeah.
if we got a drone that can take out a guy that was in the bombing of the Cole some 15 years ago.
I agree.
You mean we can't throw up some drones and create a technological wall?
Trump doesn't
for
want
these,
that.
For the, what's that?
Trump doesn't want that.
No, he doesn't
said,
want
"Oh,
that.
they
He
said
wants
we
a
need
visual.
wall."
And see, that's
Beautiful
the, I don't know if we call it semantics of this thing. He wants a wall, and you start to talk with people, and they're going, well, it could be a fence, it could be steel, it could be this, it could be drones, it could be that. And then on the other side of the aisle, we've got some folks that have been brought into Congress that are so far to the extreme. They're sitting in, they're going to Nancy Pelosi's office, and they're demanding that ICE be defunded. That the Border
Right.
Patrol be thrown into prison because you've got the crazy bartender from the Bronx who my own opinion is she's a carpetbagger. That they saw a weak district, The girl was never from the Bronx to begin with, and they pretty much parachuted her in. They got her a job at a bar, and she worked there for so long so that she could get to know people, so she could say that she was Alex from the Bronx. She's no more from the Bronx than I'm from Philadelphia, okay?
Yeah.
So you've got these two extremes. One says open borders, and the other says a wall, and you know, it's tearing us apart, you know? And so Nancy has to feed her base, and Trump has to feed throw some red meat to his base, and the folks that are in the middle are going, come on, guys, we don't need to shut down
You know,
the
I
government
really
over
think
this.
if they open, right, and that's my concern. Why is the government shut down?
Right.
For this length of time. If they open it and they actually discuss DACA again, bring
Right.
these things in.
Right.
I think Trump, you know, let him have his $5 billion for the wall.
Yeah.
I am to that point.
You know, I saw somebody put up a pie chart of the federal budget, and then they showed how much the $5 billion was. It wasn't even the thickness of a pencil.
Right.
Right, it's a small amount. Now,
Yeah.
Granted, those small amounts can add up, and you don't want stupid things.
That's what Everett Dirksen used to say.
Yeah.
You
A
don't
billion
really.
here, a billion
Billion
there.
there, yeah.
Pretty soon it adds up to
Yeah,
real money.
you know, but they, you know, they need to start, you know, discussing these things and discussing them reasonably.
Well, let me ask you this. Until yesterday, I don't think anyone had really said the whole idea of a crisis at the southern border is manufactured. I had never heard anyone say there is no crisis. Last week they were talking about the crises because children were dying at the hands of the Border Patrol and
I
so
think
forth.
what they're saying is it's not anything new. The situation that's
Oh,
at
really?
the border.
They didn't say that.
Well,
Yeah.
the word crisis came up on the right.
Yes,
When,
it
when
did.
I think of crisis, I don't think of something that's just happening now or the last. This has been a continuing problem, and it's actually getting better, believe it or not. If you look at the
number of
stats
folks
on
going
that.
out's bigger than larger than the number coming in over the last year
Yeah.
or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that a crisis is a medical term, isn't it? It used to be, I mean, somebody's in a crisis, it means if they get one bit worse, they're going to die.
But that's
Or-
such
or-
a
or they
stupid
can
thing
get
to
better.
argue about, isn't it? Is this a crisis or is, you know,
Well, is it a problem? Do we have a serious problem at the southern border?
I think so.
Sure.
Yeah.
Does it need a solution?
Yes.
You know, you look at the border states. I have relatives that live in Arizona and California on the border. Any number of times, their cars have been stolen more than my car has ever been stolen. You know, if the car makes it to Tijuana, you'll never get it back. Okay. Well, if you rent a car, you can't take that rental car to Mexico. There is a problem on the border. Is it a crisis? I don't know. Is it an issue that needs to be solved? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, are we going to do it with a two-party system? That's the question. George Washington opposed the idea of political parties, and he wrote that parties had the very real capacity to destroy the fragile unity that held the nation together. Parties would gain more power than other groups and be a detriment to the whole. They could gain enough power to seek to obstruct the execution of the laws that were created by Congress and could prevent the three branches of government from properly performing their duties as outlined by the Constitution. Now, given a little bit of backdrop, this was in the time of the French Revolution, when he would not take sides. Jefferson wanted him to. Europe was siding against, the monarchies in Europe were deciding against the revolutionaries in France. In any event, he remained neutral, and the parties beat the daylights out of him. After begging him to stay for a second term, they beat the daylights out of him for remaining neutral. One party for one reason, another party for another reason. But you had mentioned earlier, Patty, that you thought parties were necessary.
Yeah.
You know, the question, my observation is that whenever you have an issue, as you pointed out, there are going to be two sides. Even if you've only got one party, even if they're all called Democrats, the tent is not big enough for all the ideas. An issue comes along, there's going to be some Democrats for it, some Democrats. Eventually, they're going to name themselves
I
differently.
was going to say that's what's going to happen eventually.
Yes, and I don't know how in the world you
I
avoid
think
that.
what we might see is a third party developed. from
We're,
this.
we're all concerned about a partial shutdown of the federal government, but my own feeling is it is a natural price that we pay for freedom. It really is. The only way to avoid this sort of disagreement is with a benevolent monarch. Every now and then I think
Makes the
that would
trees
be
run
a
on time.
great idea. But I think parties are necessary and they're with us forever. And that the shutdown, as painful as it might be, and when you stop and think about people who may not get a paycheck on Friday, come on, I came from Akron, Ohio. I know what not getting a paycheck is all about. I mean, 9 tire factories shut down in one day. I mean, so it's not comfortable. It's not, you know, you can sing a lot of sad
But if
stories.
it can be avoided, then it should be. If it's, you could not avoid those plants shutting down. That was going to happen. This could be avoided.
My point is that it can't be. As long as you're going to have people in a democracy with different opinions, they're going to clash.
But I don't think you should use the operation of government as blackmail. I don't think that you should intentionally inflict difficulties and hardship upon people so that you can get your way.
Well,
that's just my own personal opinion.
And you get the final word in this discussion. Thank you very much, folks.